Welcome to the Snap ENT National Forum session, going from plain vanilla to the cherry on top, maximizing the power of intermediaries. My name is Nick Espinoza. I am the Snap ENT Program Analyst for FNS Southeast Region based out of Atlanta. Today, we're going to hear this presentation from our partners, United Way of Southeast Louisiana and Goodwill of North Georgia. I will also be participating in the presentation and serve as your moderator. So before we get too far, let's go ahead and start with some introductions. We have Michael Williamson, who's President and CEO of United Way of Southeast Louisiana, and Jameen Dahmer, who's Senior Vice President, also with United Way of Southeast Louisiana. We also have Jenny Taylor, who's Vice President of Career Services with Goodwill of North Georgia. And I'd like to thank all of you for participating in this session today. For our attendees, if you have any questions during the session, please avail yourselves of the Q&A tool within the Zoom taskbar at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any comments, please put those in the chat box. The presenters will tackle any questions that you might have at the end of the presentation. So let's begin. I think that it's important at the outset to determine or to establish what an intermediary is. We have invited a lot of different organizations and individuals to this national forum than we usually gather for these types of conversations nationally. So again, I want to make sure that we start with an even understanding of what an intermediary is. At its most basic, an intermediary is an organization that has a contract with the state to deliver SNAP ENT services through a network of subcontractors. Historically, the role of an intermediary has centered mostly around administrative and capacity building functions. So to make that more clear, what intermediaries have done is allowed states to be able to operate their programs more efficiently and to be able to expand services and be able to do that without the need of establishing more resources towards that effort. So they have been able to expand the capacity that they have in order to make those services possible. Over the years, the role of intermediaries has expanded to include inclusion of SNAP ENT state to broader workforce efforts and to make ecosystem of through ENT programs operates in the states more nimble and responsive to the needs of their communities. More recently, one of the things that intermediaries have transitioned into is an area of providing technical assistance and technical support through their networks around the country. So no longer are they confined just to making the administration of ENT programs more efficient and to outreach and to gather new partnerships and bring them to the fold, onboard them into state programs, but also, as that cherry indicates at the end of the screen, to monitor the environment, not only internally through the existing network of ENT service providers in the state, but to examine opportunities out in the communities, not only from employers, but through philanthropic organizations and foundations that may provide funding for ENT, to advocating for the program and its better use in more effective ways of impacting the lives of the people that we serve. So it is within that context that this presentation is going to be delivered. We're going to hear next from two organizations, again, United Way of Southeast Louisiana and then Goodwill of North Georgia, so that they can explain how they have pushed the envelope within their programs on that role, traditional role of the intermediary, and how they have expanded that reach and impact into the programs. So Michael, take it away.
Well, thank you, Nick. It's so nice to be with everyone today. Let's just start with this basic question. SNAP ENT, but why United Way of Southeast Louisiana? And for us, it was very, very simple. One, it was mission-centric. And it was pointed on our mission of eradicating poverty throughout Southeast Louisiana. As we think about that, we started to think about the ALICE report. We are an ALICE report state. We use that data to drive our strategy and program work here throughout Southeast Louisiana, and we know that SNAP employment and training directly benefits ALICE households. And then also, we believe in impact, we believe in collective impact, and we believe in doing it at scale. And we saw serving as an intermediary and partnering with our friends at the Department of Children and Family Services around SNAP employment and training would afford us an opportunity to create impact at scale. So here's a quick look at our model overview. We signed our formal contract with DCFS. You can see the picture here in 2019. We signed our first subcontract in April of 2019. And then we've worked to develop broad-based presentations to community organizations, 20+ individual agencies, and 2 multi-agency presentations in their first year, just to get the word out about how this partnership would work so we could enlist more subcontractors to join us in this partnership. So here's a quick kind of overview of our program history and our contract expansion starting from federal fiscal year 2019 through 2021, looking at starting in April and all the way through October. And we're moving into federal fiscal year 21 is what we are one of 18 contracts that contractors directly contract with the state of Louisiana through the Department of Children and Family Services. And we currently hold 7 approved subcontracts with requests from 3 different agencies hoping to determine their eligibility in 2021. And so I'm going to turn it over to my partner in crime, Jameen Dahmer, our Senior Vice President, to share a little bit about our program highlights.
Thanks, Michael. We're really happy. And I do want to say, before I even go forward on this slide, I want everybody to take this great look because Michael just mentioned how we signed our very first subcontract in April of 2019. We're very proud of that. And that's a picture of Michael and myself and my cohort, Eleanor Simmons, and Sarita Stibe, who is the Executive Director of Operation Restoration. So we're really happy to kind of put that over there. Operation Restoration is actually an organization that provides support to women and children who have been impacted because of incarceration, and they actually provide supports that gives them the opportunity to get rid of those barriers that stop them from getting employment. So as Michael mentioned, we've been moving right along. We're now in our 2nd year. And we really entered this program and this partnership with DCFS as a traditional intermediary. And that basically meant that we want to provide for the expansion and find partners that we can bring into the state system. And our main goal was really, as we did that, was then to offer them that really direct one-on-one service that we can give those agencies that we bring in. And we guide them through the entire process from where they're first developing their statements of work. And even actually before that, we developed a very small 2-page application that we used to kind of determine what initial workforce development programs they may have. And once we did that, we will literally guide them start to finish, from developing the statement of work and putting everything that we need on paper for them so that it passes compliance with the state. And then we work with them to develop those budgets so that it follows line by line all of the program expenses that go along with that budget. And if you could go to the next slide. Okay, while we're waiting for that slide. So then we do the onboarding and training supports. And one of the things that we do is we don't just do the checks and balances on the monthly, quarterly, and yearly reimbursement and reporting requirements, because we do that. We literally work with them, whether it's the eligibility list, the monthly activity list, or the reimbursement request. But we work with them as a liaison. So when there is a question that they have, if they don't understand some regulation or rule as it applies to how we're doing the reimbursements or how we're actually providing the backup documentation, we actually work directly with the state to answer those questions. And that really helps the capacity for the state to be able to streamline the conversations that go back and forth. Michael, you want to give some highlights on the cherry on top?
So yes, definitely get to talk about the cherry on top. So a few items I'd like to share with you is, one, we were fortunate because we have strong relationships with policymakers and leaders throughout the state of Louisiana. We were able to immediately use the relationship we have with our friends over at the Louisiana Community Technical College System to introduce and share the great benefits and upside of working in support of the SNAP Employment Training Program. And the state will actually be onboarding the Community Technical College System this October. So we feel like we helped make that match in heaven. And so one of our premier cherries on top, if you will. And we're working to actually expand into a more non-traditional role with our state, which we're super excited about, and more expanding on our capacities to do what we do as an organization, seeing ourselves as a convener and a facilitator. And so one of the other upsides, and for us, certainly as United Way, we serve 7 parishes throughout Southeast Louisiana. We have a really, really strong marketing apparatus and a very, very wide reach when it comes to our community. And so we've been leveraging our capacities to do promotional awareness just around SNAP employment and training and the upsides and the benefits to our communities, using our social media, 2 radio shows, blogs, et cetera, to try to get the word out and let people know that United Way is a partner in this work, and it helps us certainly enlist subcontractors that could can join us in this partnership. So you see here, this picture to the right, since we like showing pictures here, you know, in Southeast Louisiana, we host a show called Mic'd Up with Michael Williamson, and we actually had Secretary Marquita Walters there with us, to actually, and Bill Ludwig from USDA there with us, to actually talk about our program. And what we're doing is we have made our formal announcement regarding the launch of, you know, a Southeast Louisiana SNAP ENT program. And there's the cherry. And then also, you know, we work to provide critical capacity building to our subcontractors. You heard Jameen talk about it earlier. So here's my opportunity to brag on her and our team, Eleanor, just a little bit, because again, the hand holding and the support we offer, from contracts to budgeting to program reporting and adoption of best practices, it allowed Jameen and Eleanor to lean on our very, very robust back office to make sure that we're providing our partners as much support as possible. And also, we're very, very proud of our interaction with the business community and business leadership organizations. And so we're super excited to be directly involved in a partnership right now with Greater New Orleans, Inc., which is a multi-parish economic development and marketing organization, using our shared capacities to develop research and work to develop more resources around training and upskilling for workers, in particular focused on how we might leverage SNAP employment training resources to actually make this a possibility. So to you, Jenny.
Well, thank you so much, Michael and Jameen. I'm delighted to hear about the very fine work of United Way in Louisiana. We are great partners with our United Way here in Greater Atlanta and across Northeast Georgia, and know that United Way is a wonderful organization to partner with. So much that you have seen from that very fine work is also things that we have done in Georgia. We have been delighted to have an incredible partnership with the Georgia Department of Family and Children's Services and the leadership of Tatrina Young, Centrisa Johnson, and Kimberlyn Donald have really had a vision for expansion. And we've just been delighted to be a collaborator and to help execute on many of the things that they have envisioned for the state. And so I would want to just cover those with you today and explain our role. One of the big things that we did that caused us to become an intermediary in the first place was the desire of the state to have a statewide program so that every county in Georgia, and there are many of them, would be able to have employment and training services under Georgia SNAPWorks, which is the name of the ENT program in our fair state. The transition to a voluntary program was something that we helped with through the pilots that we administered for the state. Moving beyond the able-bodied adults without dependents was something that was very important, and we were able to help with the transition. We also are in the middle of launch for a dedicated, automated provider portal for the state, which will be the first of its kind that we're aware of, that takes all of the provider data reporting eligibility and creates a centralized system that the state will operate with automation between providers' databases so that they can type once and securely transfer the data without another manual entry to streamline this project for the state. As we know, an administrative burdens sometimes occur with the amount of paperwork that has to occur. And so we're really hoping to work together to build this system, which will launch 1 year from today. We've also been able to, in our role, much like United Way did, help facilitate relationships across the broader workforce development ecosystem. Our partnership with the other entities like WIOA, Voc Rehab, Department of Labor, many of the other programs that we operate, as well as our network of 5,000 employers that Goodwill of North Georgia partners with, plus the 9 Goodwill and other nonprofit organizations who subcontract for us, also have partnerships that have all been brought to bear for the SNAP Employment and Training Program, and to help DFACs to really engage with them and broaden the more intentional approach to help with seamless delivery for people across those various systems. And then of course, philanthropy, which is a huge draw for this program, and we'll go a little more in detail. The other thing that we've been delighted to bring to this partnership is our relationship with employers who are both funders, engage with providing training, and hire graduates from some national corporations who are invested in this kind of program and really are delighted to invest and hire graduates. And I've listed some of the organizations who that is included. It's both from the Goodwill Industries international level, as well as at our local level. We're able to help facilitate those partnerships. And then what we've learned in Georgia, we have been very blessed to be able to share, being part of both the Goodwill movement and the broader community of nonprofit organizations who are workforce development providers. We've been able to help just learn the good, bad, and ugly about what works so that others can quickly get up to speed and not make some of the same mistakes that we've made along the way. So we help each other a great deal. This is an example of some of the marketing that we have done to increase participation rates across our state. When we began, we were under a waiver for the work requirement, but those were coming into effect state, county by county, and we really wanted a positive message for folks and to give them some optimism about what their career would be like. And this is an example of how that looked. And that expansion started in 2017, and you can see throughout the counties that the goal was to help do that statewide. And the reason that we were chosen as the first intermediary is because of the Goodwill network. We are covering the entire state of Georgia. In fact, Goodwill's cover is Goodwill's neighbor. There is a Goodwill within just a few miles of 82%, I think is the right percentage, of the population in the United States. And 1 out of every 275 adults who went to work last year did so with help from a Goodwill local member organization. And so it was a natural fit for us. We work as the Georgia Goodwill Association very closely with our sister Goodwills who serve this state. And we were able then to bring rural, urban, and suburban services to the SNAP program. So that worked pretty well. The state was pleased with what we had done, having a single point of contact, as is the case with most intermediary organizations. But we wanted to go beyond that and begin to include those what they call the 360 degrees of work supports, which are the things that we all know are important for people to overcome as barriers to participation in a program like this, and ultimately to become self-sufficient through work. So transportation, childcare, those are things that you must have in order to be successful. But organizations who did not also have a workforce development program didn't know that they could participate with the SNAP ENT program or SNAPWorks in Georgia. And so by partnering with the workforce development organizations who are doing vocational training and adult basic education for these work supports, we were able to bring them on board. The other thing that this does is allow for very small and medium-sized organizations who may not have the administrative capacity or the expertise to have a contract immediately on their own. By hand-holding and bringing support to them and really helping them to manage this process, we've been able to bring on board more and different kinds of partners to bring more resources to the people that we serve. Again, a very positive messaging that we're looking for this program, really focusing on growth and self-sufficiency rather than anything punitive or requirements. And it's been a success. In our organization last year, we put more than 25,000 people to work, a large percentage of which were SNAP recipients, and many were participating in the SNAP Implement and Training Program. And so with that, I will turn it over back to our colleague and partner, Nick Espinosa, to talk to you about what the benefits of an intermediary can be, especially with that cherry on top, to the state agencies.
Jenny, and if you don't mind actually clicking through the animation on the slide, I would appreciate it. So by now, I'm hoping that you will see that there are vast amounts of benefits to having an intermediary, or for states to have an intermediary relationship with an organization within their state or several organizations within their state. I'm going to try and tackle to represent our partners in the state of Georgia and the state of Louisiana, just to recap the benefits for the state before our presenters will go ahead and tackle the benefits that they've seen to their own organization and ultimately, most importantly, to the people that we serve. So the benefits to the state, again, to recap, are administrative incapacity building. Again, these relationships really enable the states to do more with what they have and to be able to be nimble and have those connections to organizations within their communities that are experts, that have their ear to the ground, and that really know what it's actually taking to put someone to work. So having those connections really immediately in a very short order connects a state E&T program to the broader workforce development system within their state, not only just increasing the administrative and capacity aspects of it. The other thing that is very, very important is that intermediaries act as a translator and sometimes as an ambassador to the program, because a lot of organizations may not have direct experience working with the government, whether it be at the state level or federal level, dealing with those requirements. They are able to translate those requirements into something that is manageable, into something that that organization can handle, in order to then allow them to become an E&T partner in their own right with the state, whether they be through a standalone contract or through a subcontractor relationship with an intermediary. Intermediaries know intimately what the limitations are within government, so consequently, oftentimes, working through intermediaries can make the program more nimble, allow it to take advantage of opportunities quicker, and to be able to, again, really have a clear understanding of what it takes with changing economic conditions, especially at this time when there's so many of us that have been impacted by COVID and the pandemic, to really get those services that are crucial and needed to get those folks back on their feet and back to work. So again, I'm going to turn over the presentation to our colleagues to talk about the benefits to their organizations and to our population. Thank you.
So Michael, I think this is you. I can cover it if you're not prepared.
I'm sorry about that. No, absolutely. Sorry to be late to the party here. So certainly let's talk quickly about the benefits to intermediaries and the providers. First of all, we're talking about additional dollars for programs and services. And what we saw in our region was a huge upside to bring much needed resources to training programs that already existed. We're already doing great work. We also think from a philanthropic standpoint, for donors that are looking for places where they can invest limited philanthropic dollars, seeing the upside of the reimbursements for SNAP ENT certainly were a great draw for local philanthropy in our community. I'm sure that holds true other places. And also, it allows us to leverage our connections to state systems and leadership throughout our state, leveraging our relationships not only in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, our state capital, but with policymakers throughout our region that are often interested in how do we expand access to workforce education and training programs. And then the ability to leverage our relationships and resources, like I said, across multiple sources and providers to better serve the recipients, as Jenny said earlier, the people that we're trying to help in the first place, therefore amplifying our community impact strategy work. And I've mentioned that before, that we believe very much in collaboration and collective impact strategies. And it helps us to develop different relationships with other agencies and increase opportunities for collaboration and partnership. As Jameen mentioned earlier, our work with Operation Restoration, not only are they a grant recipient of our United Way, they're also a SNAP ENT subcontractor.
Jenny, I believe you're muted. Jenny, you're muted.
So sorry, technical difficulties. I advanced all the way to the end of the screen, right, hitting the wrong button. So I hope that you can now see my screen. Once again, that says benefits to the people who are served and the benefits to society. Again, apologies for that technical difficulty. Michael, thank you. I did want to share one of the return on investment studies, a third-party evaluation that we participated in at Goodwill of North Georgia. It happened to be through the United Way of Greater Atlanta, the Atlanta Career Rise Initiative, which is really a National Fund for Workforce Solutions project that is a funders collaborative focused on workforce development. And what Career Rise did is commission a study of all of their investments, including Goodwill of North Georgia as one of the providers. Now, we just did a subset of the people that we serve because we didn't want to overwhelm the study with the thousands of people, but just looking at individuals, and we're talking about not formulaic studies, we're talking about specific individuals and the earnings at the project entry, their public benefits at project entry, and then the interventions that were provided looking at them 2 years after enrollment, whether they had increases in earnings, and really looked at the effectiveness of the program and specifically return on investment. One of the things that this 47% of increase in wages at intake, we assumed, even if the person was totally unemployed and had 0 wages, we assumed that they could get a minimum wage job for our region, and that became the baseline for us to measure increase in earnings. And so the delta was really between minimum wage, even if the person had no earnings at project entry, to their exit and what they were earning post-program retention. And so this is some of the programmatic success, but I think this slide will be the most interesting to the rest of our audience. This is really about what SNAP employment and training is all about. Because our participants in the program were able to increase their earnings, get wages and benefits, they became more self-sufficient and therefore reduced their reliance on public assistance. As you can see, a 68% reduction in both SNAP and TANF, and a $231,000 plus savings for only 203 individuals studied. Remember, this is exactly what those individuals were doing pre and post program. So if you did do a formula and extrapolated these kinds of programs that we deliver and the benefits for SNAP employment and training, both to the taxpayer and the state and the people served and the provider, makes this intermediary relationship among providers all the more valuable. And so now I'm going to turn it back over to Nick, and he is going to ask us some questions as a panel.
Well, thank you, Jenny. And those are very, very impressive results of your study. Thank you for sharing them with all of us. And you're right, it really does reflect not only on the power of the training programs that you're delivering, but also how intermediaries can make not only those programs possible, but also give you an opportunity to conduct evaluation studies like the ones that Jenny is talking about. So that is another added benefit that we can just tack on to the end of the previous ones that we have been discussing. So at this point, I'd like to ask our panelists some questions just to round out the discussion and to provide a little bit more context onto their experiences, not only being SNAP ENT providers, but also being intermediaries. So will one of you please tell me, or all of you, please tell me, how did you learn about the intermediary model and what compelled you to become one? Jenny, do you want to tackle that one?
Sure, I would be happy to start, and then I'll turn it over to Michael. We actually were asked by the state and our federal partner to become an intermediary. So it was a request made to us, and because of our strong partnership with the Georgia Goodwill Association, we agreed and then have since expanded our role. Michael?
So absolutely. So we had actually, there was a consulting group doing some work in one of our parishes that brought the program to our attention. They were working with they were working with other United Ways. And so we started to look into the program. We had a conversation with who then was fairly new secretary for the Department of Children and Family Services to start those conversations. We learned about it there. And then honestly, what compelled us to move forward was the sound business case. It was on mission for us, and it just, it spoke to the work that we do, and we thought there was such a sound business case for it, we couldn't resist.
Great, thank you both for that. The next question, where has your organization been able to add more value to the state's program as an intermediary? Michael?
So yeah, there was, I think I mentioned it earlier in the presentation, but just to kind of reinforce this, one is our United Way, we cover 7 parishes. We have a trained resource development team that is out in front of 800 businesses every year during our annual campaign and fundraising efforts. And so we had a natural kind of communications and resource development function there that we could leverage. And we've done, I think, really, really well just raising awareness around the program. And so that also allows us an opportunity to show greater value to our corporate partners, and then also raise resources that could be directed into SNAP ENT training programs. And also our back office, I think I mentioned it earlier, but we have a very, very robust accounting back office. And so Jameen and Eleanor and our team were able to lean very heavily on our finance and accounting team to make sure that we could properly support the administrative needs of the program and our program partners, which I think was essential, because this is can be challenging work to do, but when you have the right kind of support mechanism in an intermediary, say that twice really fast, it makes it much easier for our program partners who are there to deliver the program.
And I'll just add that one of the things that is a favorite phrase of our state SNAP implement and training coordinator is that the partner of my partner is my partner. And so we at Goodwill of North Georgia have been blessed to really focus on partnership and collaboration as the better way to serve clients. It's not always the easier way, but it certainly is the better way with better outcomes, stronger performance, and a more seamless method of delivery that creates the path of least resistance towards success for the people that we serve. And so we endeavor to do that for our state agency. And I think the other value that we bring is we make things easier. Probably, I will admit, sometimes too easy for the state when we may go boldly forward to implement something, and we really have to make sure that we have the communication levels to ensure that we're checking it at every point of the way with our state and federal partners to make sure we haven't made it too easy to get things done and that we're following all the protocols that need to be in place with the chain of command.
Sorry, I was still muted. What I was going to say that it sounds to me from your responses that you both are creating a very trusting and symbiotic relationship with your state folks and your programs to the extent that you are able to now really be true advocates and sort of feed off of each other, provide suggestions and ideas that the state can then, come back to you and try to with your input, try to develop an intervention for that will actually deliver the greatest results out into the community. So I thank you both for providing that insight. My next question is, how has the model added value to your organization? And you can answer this whether it's just how has SNAP ENT provided more value to your organization, or how has the intermediary model provided more value to the organization? So let's go back and forth, and I'll pick on Jenny to start this time around.
Certainly. Thank you, Nick. Many different ways is the answer to this question. One of the primary things is it's elevated our own visibility and our ability to partner with others. We already had a strong collaboration model, but playing this role for the state acting on their behalf has allowed us to really get to know some new partners very, very well and look at ways that we can partner as an agency, not just for SNAP implement and training, but across all of the workforce development ecosystem. We had a recent initiative where CARES Act funding was made available through one of our large counties, and it was precisely for the kinds of services that we delivered, but because it was such large scope, we were able to immediately go to all of the partnerships that we had established through SNAP Implement Training, through SNAPworks in Georgia, and spread that contract out among more than a dozen providers, and because we already had those relationships. And so the value to our organization, in addition to just the straight 50% reimbursement that these third-party partnerships bring, which of course is a wonderful benefit, but really the ability to partner more quickly, more efficiently, and more seamlessly across the system has been one of the greatest things that we have enjoyed.
Michael and Jameen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a theme that's been developing here around collaboration, but for us in particular, it changed the way we would engage our workforce development partners in economic development organizations, because now we were seen as a partner was bringing our capacity to the same causes that they cared about, especially when it comes to workforce. And so we've engaged in all kind of unique conversations with the Federal Reserve Bank, the branch in our community, powerful data and research, lots of insights into kind of workforce economic development trends. And so we've been able to have very robust conversations about how do we partner with organizations like that before, I don't know that we'd had those same types of conversations. We would be considered much more traditional United Way. And then also, at our United Way, we talk about return on investment. When a donor gives us $1, how much impact can we create with that dollar? And what we're able to say, thanks to SNAP Employment and Training, and just initially with the resources we're moving to our partners, our subcontractors, is that we're literally going to move millions of dollars into workforce education and training programs and improve outcomes for individuals that we often refer to as ALICE. And so now we tell an individual, if you give us $1, we're going to create $5.72 in impact and community impact. And SNAP ENT plays a huge part in that.
Thank you, Michael. And I think that's the perfect segue to this next question. So maybe you'll want to also just keep on adding some comments on this one. And that is, how has the model enabled you to leverage additional funding from foundations or grants into what you do, the mission that you already have?
So I think this is advice that I would give to anybody out there that's considering serving as an intermediary. This is such a great opportunity to start working from the outset to develop your strategy and your case for engaging philanthropy. Our United Way invested significant resources to kind of capitalize our effort on the front end, but we're actually having conversations with lots of funders around this particular issue, and we're seeing serious interest in making a philanthropic investment in kind of a new type of collaborative. So for us, we're kind of early. If there was one thing I would say, hindsight being 2020, at the same time you're considering the launch of your role as an intermediary, I'd be building my case and my strategy for engaging philanthropy and bring them along for the ride too. It's people tend to support things that they create, but we see a huge upside. And even as it shifts the way United Way does business, traditional fundraising is changing dramatically. But we see this as a great way to engage our industry partners, both public and private partners, to invest in our capacity to scale this work even farther than we have already.
Jenny, I know that part of your Snap to Skills project, when you went through that cohort, was around engaging with foundations or with philanthropy. Can you talk a little bit about that? And Michael, I cannot agree with you more. I think that this is a perfect conversation starter and something that is really tangible that organizations can do to, again, leverage that funding. But I think that Jenny actually created a special tool as part of her project, and I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about that.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. So when we first began this work, it was as a provider, and we were looking at the investments that we already had and how we could match those to these services in order to get the reimbursement through the third-party partnership. But ultimately, what ended up happening, especially in our role as intermediary, is we were able to assess the programs and services and partners that are part of our network to approach philanthropy and build relationships with them. And that tool allowed us to enter into a formal way to have that conversation with them. And what it's resulted in is that we are able to drive conversations with the philanthropic community to educate them about what SNAP employment and training is all about, to tell them about some of the investments that have already been made that go further, and then see if they want to join and be part of that, and introduce them to other organizations who are having success, because most often it's not a question of the dollars, it's a question of the model that drives success. And when you have a model that drives success, the dollars will generally follow. Obviously, that's not a foolproof assumption, as people who are in the fundraising business or development world would know, but generally speaking, it is much, much easier to attract investment if you have a model that works. And so this is one more piece in the arsenal that really helps to move people towards an investment that's going to make a big impact.
Thank you. Did you want to say something about the tool, or?
I am happy to share the tool with anybody who would like to take a look at it. Available to anyone.
I'm sorry, Jenny, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but thank you very much for that. And for both of you for that insight. I think that is something that's very, very, very important. So I think that we're coming down to the nitty gritty. So if you have organizations, individuals in the audience that are interested, are intrigued about not only becoming SNAP ENT partners, but also becoming intermediaries, what advice would you give to them as they consider becoming an intermediary? Jenny, do you want to tackle this one first?
Sure. So if those of you in the audience are considering moving from provider to intermediary, or perhaps you are already serving that role, but not for SNAP employment and training, some of the things that I would encourage you to consider from what we have learned is that establishing the roles and the responsibilities for the state and where the limits are early is very important. Knowing who is going to do what the cadence of communication and accountability is going to be, that you are communicating regularly. And if you are very successful and have the kinds of exponential growth that we have seen in our 3 and 4 year partnership with our state, build in mechanisms for change. Because what starts as a very small program, we started with 10 people in one county, which I, as an organization who serves tens of thousands of people, pushed hard against that. Please, how about 100? Can we start with 100? But Nick Espinosa and Tatrina Young were absolutely correct. 10 was the right number to start with because it was new for everybody. It was new for the state to have a third-party partner. It was new for Goodwill to have a SNAP implement and training contract. And it took us 6 months to serve 10 people, which, again, as an organization that serves tens of thousands, was humbling. But we have since gone from tens to hundreds to thousands. And each of those shifts in your operations and as an intermediary managing multiple partners and broad systems with people who weren't there when the program was started to learn from all of that history, it's important to build in mechanisms for change management because the program that you begin will not be the one that you end if you're successful, if you meet all of your goals. And so that would be my advice to others as you begin to explore partnerships like this one.
Michael and Jameen?
I stepped away for a minute. All the recording, you can't stop FedEx from knocking on your door. I want to tackle this first, and then Michael, please add in. But I want to say, if you're going to go into this, just go in for it. Dive straight in, because I can tell you that it does take a little bit of time. There's a learning curve, but one of the biggest things about considering becoming is the value that you add to the partners that you bring to the table. We've said it throughout the entire presentation. You've heard it over and over again, the word capacity, capacity, capacity. And the fact that you can help provide capacity not only to the state, but to those agencies that might not otherwise have capacity to participate, it's phenomenal. I mean, anytime you help facilitate the return of funding to an organization that can then reinvest that funding back in their workforce development program, that's a big win.
Yeah, Nick, I would just add that because Jameen and I talked about this a lot, that if I'm a staff person in an organization that's considering it, I'm thinking United Way, but think any organization might consider the intermediary role. You got to think about what the case is for your CEO and your CEO's board. And what I saw with our particular organization was, I was involved at the beginning, so I was formulating what the business case was. Then I had a conversation with my board chair at the time and talked about, what I saw as the business case, and it kind of boiled down to what it would cost for us to deliver impact at scale and put that into a business case and say, well, if this costs us X number of dollars, but we're going to move 10, 20 times the amount of those resources back into our community support work that directly aligns with our mission, don't you think that's a good idea? And my board chair, my finance committee, folks at our organization all bought in, said even if this has a net cost to our organization, it's worth doing because we saw the upside impact it would have on workforce education and training partners in our region. So CEOs out there, make sure you get your business case ready and sell it to your board and convince them this is a good thing to do, because I can promise you it is.
Well, thank you both for that. I think that I will also add that one of really the prerequisites of becoming an intermediary is having a lot of experience and some expertise in SNAP ENT itself, because part of the role of an intermediary, as we've heard already, is not just to assist with the administrative functions. Now you have heard about a whole host, a whole gamut of roles that an intermediary can play, and some of those include technical assistance. So you have to have policy knowledge on ENT, and you also have to, as Jenny was mentioning, really be cognizant of the role that you play within the state system. These are state operated programs. Ultimately, states have control of ENT programs. So I think that having, again, the SNAP ENT expertise just as a provider, and also some policy knowledge and expertise around that, and also knowing those roles is vitally important. But thank you both for that. So let's move on to the next question. This is a little bit broader. How are you using your knowledge as intermediaries to guide your fellow organizations from around the country? One of the things that we have been exploring, and I think that you will probably hear an announcement from our agency very soon if it hasn't already been sent out there, is that there is an effort to try and develop some sort of national strategies around ENT. How has your organization tackled this through your role as an intermediary?
So I will jump in with that. And with that segue, I did get permission that we have been released from embargo, that Goodwill Industries International was selected as one of the national partner organizations for technical assistance by OET. And so delighted to say that Goodwill of North Georgia was competitively selected to provide technical assistance across the country under that new initiative. And so by the time that you see this, it will be much broader out into the world, but we have been released from embargo to share that happy news. But I will tell you that the reason that we were able to be selected for that is because we have been using what we've been learning in Georgia to help our sister Goodwills in Texas, to help them in Houston with the first partnership with their state agency for a third-party model, and successfully help them to launch a program and get that off of the ground. And then we've had a number of people all throughout the country, whether they're Goodwills or not, asking us for advice and support to learn from what we have done, because of the significant growth that we've had through our partnership with Georgia Department of Family and Children's Services, to really export that knowledge and help others to explore new ways to think about their partnerships and people to partner with and how they might accomplish what they're doing. And so I'm just so excited and delighted that we'll be able to help more people to grow their programs, increase participation, and ultimately to help more people move to self-sufficiency through employment and training.
Michael?
I might start this for Michael on behalf of United Way. I mean, for us, let me touch on the local side, because when we came in, we are our little corner of the state with our United Way, with 7 parishes and a big dream about how we could partner with DCFS on this. And so we started looking at our own funded partners locally. And we fund 77 different programs just within our own United Way network. So when we look at that, I mean, we had a very broad reach to start a conversation with people that we already have relationships with. So that's kind of where we started. And that's where we kind of planted our feet on the ground and said, let's start in our yard that we know, and then let's knock the fence down and move out from there. And so it kind of allowed us the capacity to start those big conversations. And when I say we started the conversations, we literally sent an email to every single one of our CEOs or our case managers or people that were working in those organizations and talked to them individually about what this was. We then did a scan as to the types of workforce development programs or how they might fit into this. And then we started tailoring those bigger conversations where we were bringing on groups of people. And then that led to, and I'll let Michael jump in here, but that led to the conversation of what does that look like on a statewide level, and how do we approach that conversation on a statewide level?
Yeah, so Jameen had mentioned kind of our network and our reach, you know, outside of our programs, but in the state of Louisiana, there are 12 United Ways that serve 64 parishes. And so you think about the ability to scale, reach, and the role as an intermediary and get more folks on board. And then also our U.S. network as a part of United Way Worldwide. I can only imagine the power and the possibility if United Way Worldwide and Goodwill Industries and others are partnering around this important work and just bringing not only attention, but how do we scale investments? Because we're thinking about the long-term possibilities of how you can scale investments in philanthropy in a way to support workforce education and training, demonstrating the upside. So we have an amazing network, over 1,200 United Ways in the U.S. alone. It could be prime prospects for playing intermediaries in their communities if it was so desired.
Perfect. Thank you with that. So we're coming to the end of our question session. This is next to last. If you could start the process all over again, what would you change? And again, you can speak to this just at Snap ENT in general, or you can focus it to the role as an intermediary. Michael, do you want to tackle this one, or Jameen?
I'll tackle that one. I laughed when I saw the question. So outside of the time frame to work out all the details, listen, this is what I say. There will always be challenges, but the benefits far outweigh every challenge that you might even think about. If you just listen back to everything that's been said over these last 45 minutes and the value proposition that it adds to your organization, the challenges just become a part of the situation that you just work around. And I mean, really and truly, the first thing I think that anyone, if you think about the process that it takes, is to acknowledge and understand that government moves at a different pace than most every nonprofit that we know. And if you can understand that, then you've really overcome the big hurdle of understanding how they work. They're complex. And just, if you're aware of that, then you're great. And, you know, you actually have to pivot a lot. I think, Nick, you mentioned it early on about, you know, being nimble and saying that. I mean, if we look at what's happened just over the last several weeks in our state, our DCFS office had to pivot immediately and move into DSNAP formation, where they were all working to provide disaster food stamps to those affected from Hurricane Laura. And so for us, part of our capacity was to make sure that none of our people that we were working with fell behind, that we kept moving them forward and we kept them on track, so that when DCFS came back online to move back into their regular everyday non-disaster role, that things kept rolling. And that capacity to the state is really important. And again, I just think there's a lot of nuances involved in executing the contract, and there's a lot of ins and outs for the procedures and the program support. And one of the things that I know we're moving into is becoming very embedded with DCFS in their everyday and weekly meetings as they're moving forward. So, you know, to kind of close it out, I'd say trust in the expertise of your state, because we do, and cut yourself some slack if you're going through the process to become an intermediary. It's complex and it can take a little minute to understand everything and understand those nuances, but again, it's all worth it.
Well, Jameen, I think you've really hit the nail on the head. I will not repeat all the things you just said, but I applaud them and echo them. I will say that in hindsight, which is always 2020, one of the things that I didn't anticipate that I should have is that while it is intuitive that you know you must be nimble, responsive, and change when there are things like a pandemic during a shutdown and you have to re-engineer your programs, and hopefully you have a trusting relationship and good communication methods that you can do that, not just acting as yourself for your own programs, but by getting the input of all of the people involved and talking to make those changes. But what isn't always as intuitive is that change is going to be part of this process. And some of the things that my team had to learn is that once we've worked through an issue, solved a problem, come to a solution, they sort of felt like, okay, that's done, that's settled, that's the way we're going to do things. And I needed to build in much more change management into the process, because every time we add a new provider, every time we have an amendment to a state plan, every time there's a policy clarification, every time that we grow each level, those things are going to change. And so the number of times that our state leadership and I have had a conversation about, you know, we're learning it all together. It's okay. It's okay. These things, we did it wrong. Or we didn't know that it changed, or we didn't communicate that change well, or we didn't anticipate this, those were all things that we should have known from the beginning. And to build in a change management process from the beginning would have been something that I should have anticipated, going from we're only going to serve 10 people to we serve thousands of people together now. And we have dozens of providers, and we are continuing to grow. And so of course, each one of those things are going to have growing pains, and we needed a mechanism for people to be more prepared.
That is very, very good advice from all of you. I could not agree with you more. So let's delve into the last question of the session before we open it up for questions from the members of our audience. So I'm going to open up the vulnerability here and ask you for your candid comment on what recommendations or suggestions you have for SNAP ENT stakeholders. And amongst the stakeholders, that includes us at USDA. What could we be doing better in SNAP ENT, and in particular around the intermediary model? Jenny, do you want to get started on this one?
Boy, do I ever. No, I'm kidding. You know, one of the things that I think that has made us successful, and one of the things that I delight in the state leadership in Georgia, with Katrina and Kimberlyn and Centrisa and her team, and even the leadership of Tom Rawlings, our commissioner, our director, is that we think big. We are probably an annoying little mosquito, or perhaps elephant in the room. I'm not sure which we would be characterized as, but we are constantly bringing questions, ideas, policy clarifications, and pushing the envelope of, well, why can't we? Well, why isn't that allowed? Well, what are other states doing? Well, can we do that too? And we think really big and really think about possibilities of what could be rather than what is for this program. And almost everything that we've thought of has come to fruition and has allowed us to expand and grow and improve the service delivery to the people in Georgia from where it was. Again, Katrina Young says, this is not your grandmama's SNAP ENT program, that it is a very different approach with credentials and case management and career pathways that are in collaboration with co-enrollment with the college system. And all of those things come about because we think about what could be, what might we do? And we really take that human-centered design approach rather than just learning what is. And so that would be my advice and recommendation is they're very nice people at FNS, and they will tolerate your many questions and tell you no when it's appropriate. But as my old boss used to say, you have not because you ask not. And so be unafraid to ask those questions is my advice and recommendation.
Jameen and Michael?
Well, Nick, I'm going to be like super cordial here, but I think, first and foremost, I think this is essential just in about any collaboration, but make sure all your stakeholders are engaged. I think, certainly for our friends at DCFS, but make sure the door is open, the table's set, and all your stakeholders can be at the table and communicate. If it says, if you're in the room, it's, I can't even remember the saying, so I won't even try. But, and also, it's like, if your tent's not big enough, build a bigger tent. And I think, in this type of partnership, the more the merrier. And so we say around our organization, if the tent's not big enough, build a bigger tent. And I think also it's just important for us to realize, and I think this is something that Secretary Walters in the state of Louisiana fully understands and grasps, is that collective impact allows you to change lives at scale. And so I think the Secretary was very open in bringing our teams together to say, how do we partner? Because we have trust and confidence in you. But she recognized that DCFS could not do it alone. And my recommendations for anybody that's trying to think about getting into this, whether it's USDA and the local DCFSs of the world and United Ways or Goodwill, is just recognize that you don't do this work alone, and you only achieve impact at scale when you work together.
Well, I think that my hope is that you as audience members will have gotten a clear sense that intermediaries are a best practice in SNAP ENT, and that we highly recommend them for states for a variety of reasons, not just for the garden variety of reasons of increasing capacity and administrative efficiency, but also to really ramp up the impact that your programs have at all levels, whether it be funding, whether it be focusing on special populations, whether it be in advocacy, or just figuring out better ways of actually partnering with organizations to deliver a better product to the folks that we serve. In the coming weeks, I'm sure that you will hear a lot of messages from Secretary Perdue and his Moving Families Forward initiative. This is definitely an opportunity for SNAP ENT to move families forward. So I want to thank our presenters very much for joining us for this session, providing insights on this very, very timely topic. Before we move on to the Q&As, I do want to add something that I skipped inadvertently at the beginning at the introduction, and that's just to remind everyone that this discussion does not reflect official FNS policy. So if you have any questions, as Jenny suggested, please contact your SNAP Employment and Training Program Analyst in your region. We'll be more than happy to assist or to clarify any questions that you have. And now we will go ahead and move to answer questions that have been collected through the Q&A feature. And if you still have questions, you still have an opportunity to go ahead and input them in the Q&A feature on that Zoom taskbar. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope that you found this information useful. Have a great day.